Hey guys, I'm gonna answer a few questions from the book that I got that Professor Baker put up on Canvas. Um, the first question that I'm going to answer is the question about what kind of family is the Clutter household, and in what way does Capote create sympathy for them? Um, so just in reading the book, you can tell that the Clutter family was a very tight knit, close family. Um, they seemed, like the all American family, like the perfect family, except for Bonnie. She suffered from clinical depression, and it would leave her bedridden for days on end. And they finally discovered that it was it had to do with dislocation in her spinal column, and she was expected to make a full recovery. um but other than that, they were all just it was just a very perfect family. Like, all the kids were loved by everybody in the town. Um Herb was probably one of the favorite men in the town. um I think the author, when it has to do with creating sympathy for the family, I think that the author, sympathizes for the family because of the way that they were brought up and how violent that these murders ended up being. It just, you know, it makes you just feel bad. And the author really does a great job at writing that, sympathy in the story. Um, I think the Clutters really did represent the American dream. Like, they were loved by every community member. Like, they had money. Like, they were overall a very well off family. And I feel like maybe that was the point. Maybe that's why they were targeted. Um, so the next question I'm gonna go over is um about about the town's reactions to the murders and about the town. I can't find the question on. I don't know where it's at. But oh. So Holcomb was a really small town, and I don't think it really had very much crime in it before this. Um, so I think when those murders took place, the citizens, they went into a state of shock, and they were just completely taken over by fear because they had never experienced something like this before. Um, and it's when, the revelation of the person that did the murders might have been somebody that the Clutter family knew, then the whole community began to mistrust their neighbors. They all grew increasingly paranoid, and they began to question their own values and what they believed in, because they were just not really sure of what was going on. Because if somebody could do that in their town, it honestly could have been anyone. And so they were just very, you know, thrown off by it. The murders really wreaked havoc on that town. They really took the whole sense of well-being away from every person in that town. And the townspeople began acting on the situation, I guess, and it seemed like they took the murders very personally. And I would too, if it seemed like a very, tight knit community as well. And I can really see that, you know, this family was loved. So for something so like crazy and violent to happen to them, like the people of the town wanted justice and they were looking for it and they were really trying to, fight for it. They were constantly going up to the investigator or whatever, trying to give him tips, trying to like help him out, trying to, because they really did want to find whoever did this to the Clutter family and, get justice for them. I think in the book there was a quote where it said, the crime confronted the townsfolk of Holcombe with their own isolation. Neighborliness evaporated. The natural order seemed suspended. Chaos poised to rush in. They distrusted and came to suspect not terrible strangers, but themselves. And that just really shows how they didn't even, they couldn't even, they didn't feel comfortable waving at their neighbors or anything anymore just because you don't know what if it was your neighbor that did it, because it could have been anybody, and they just were completely taken over by fear, and that's just really crazy. The next one I wanted to go over was like the mood and the organization of the story. I think that the author is really able to jump back and forth from like character to character and like from scene to scene very like seamlessly. He's able to create this great amount of suspense, and it just builds by his writing. Not many people can write like that without confusing their readers. But I think that this author really did well. Also, by him writing the book, like it really built up the suspense because we all knew what was going to happen, but the way he wrote it made it kind of like, when is it going to happen? When, blah, 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 you know. Also, something that I thought was like really interesting about the way that this book was written was how they wrote it, and the author wrote it as like it would take us through the events that happened Saturday, November 14th, which is like kind of creepy because it basically took you through the family's last everythings. Like you were going through like their last day with them because you knew what was going to happen, but the author was really taking you through like its lasts. The last question I wanted to go over was the preparations of Dick and Perry that they made for the crime and what we learned about each of them and their backgrounds. So Dick and Perry were both like on parole from prison, so they're obviously not good guys in the first place. And it's Perry was very like reserved, and Dick was easygoing and self-assured, but Perry was a lot more cautious and more reflective. And I really think that Perry admired Dick for being like very masculine type, and but I think it said somewhere in the book that like Dick needs Perry for what he considers Perry to be like a natural killer tendencies. And then it just would describe them making their drive down. Dick, in preparation, Dick stole his father's 12-gauge shotgun. And they made up this whole story saying that they were planning to visit like Perry's sister in Fort Scott. And so they get on the road and they stop like multiple times like along the way. And when reading this, it made me think that they had a plan. This was really a thought out thing, because if you were to stop and buy what they bought at multiple places in one place, Like they stopped and bought rubber gloves in one place, rope in one place, like black stockings in another place. If you were to go and buy all of that just like in one store, it would be very suspicious, I guess. And it I really think that the author did a great job, like, you know, showing like detail, talking about, Dick and Perry, and how, Dick and Perry, they were both just these guys who wanted to score, and their want to, score had to take the lives of, this, all American family, who had no idea. I thought it was really ironic in one part of the book where I think it was like one of the sons goes and buys like life insurance or something, and the person he buys it from tells him like, "Oh, hope you live like a long, like happy life," or something like that. And he's like, "Oh, I hope I do too," but then, he gets murdered in this completely violent way. So I just think, like, the irony of that was just crazy, and the way that the author wrote this book to portray the irony and to portray, suspense was great. I really enjoy this book so far. It's a good read. It's interesting. I really like this kind of genre. Um, and like I said earlier, it's interesting how the author can like jump from like character to character or and things like that without it becoming confusing for me as a reader, because a lot of times I get lost in things like that. But um, I'm interested to see what more the book has to offer in these next few parts. So I hope you guys enjoyed the first two parts as much as I did. Thanks.